The 2023 Nobel Peace Prize laureate, Narges Mohammadi, says she is writing a book on the torture and sexual abuse of female prisoners in Iran. The human rights activist has spent years in prison and says she has witnessed serious sexual violence. Right now, she's out on health grounds, but could be rearrested at any time. Amnesty International also says Iranian security forces used rape and other forms of sexual violence to punish demonstrators during nationwide protests in 2022.
Rare new footage of Narges Mohammadi standing outside a prison in Mashhad, using her temporary freedom to express solidarity with the political prisoners inside.
I came to Vakilabad prison to pay my respects to them and to declare that they are a part of me.
Mohammadi's decades-long fight for human rights in Iran has seen her jailed repeatedly over the past 25 years. Most recently, she's been at the infamous Evin prison in Tehran. Many reports have emerged from behind these walls of rape, sexual assault and violence used to break the will of political prisoners. The case in 2022 of Gina Mahsa Amini, who died in custody after being arrested for allegedly not wearing her hijab correctly, highlighted the authorities' treatment of women. It triggered huge protests, giving birth to the Women Life Freedom movement. Witnesses say the abuse has been going on since the 1979 revolution.
I think it was 1983. We got a message in Morse code saying the interrogator had given a girl until the next day to start giving information. If not, he would rape her. The next morning, the floor of her cell was covered in blood. She had committed suicide.
Younger prisoners are especially at risk. A belief that virgin girls will go to heaven if executed means guards sometimes rape female prisoners just to ensure they don't die as virgins. Others are subjected to so-called virginity tests.
Before I was arrested, I knew a girl who had been arrested and raped by 3 guards, and she became pregnant as a result. Once in prison, I encountered other cases too.
The large protests against Iran's hardline regime have been crushed, and many activists are still paying a heavy price behind bars.
For more, we can now speak to Iranian journalist and human rights activist Narges Mohammadi. She was arrested several times and imprisoned twice in Iran because of her activism and her Christian faith. She eventually fled to the United States, where she joins me from tonight. Mary, welcome to DW. Thank you so much for joining us. If I may, I'd like to start by asking you to tell us some of what you experienced while you were in prison.
Actually, as you said, I was imprisoned in several detention centers and prisons. I would say for the first time that I was arrested, I was transferred to Evin prison. And in almost all of my interrogation, in terms of sexual violence, that this is your topic, I was asked all the time about my sexual relationships, which is totally private. And they wanted me to explain in details about the sexual relationships that I've never had. And when I refused to answer their questions, my interrogators started to explain and imaginary sexual relationships, and it was horrible. It made a very strong shame sense in me. And also, I had this experience, and when I was imprisoned for the second time, I was transferred to Rashid prison. And I was asked, I don't believe why, I don't know why, I was asked, are you virgin or not? And this is not their business, you know. And because I didn't want to be interrogated again, because I had that experience, I said, yes, I am virgin. And unbelievably, I was asked why you are virgin. And also, when I was arrested, when I was participating in the protest on the street in January 2020, in the anti-regime protest, I was transferred to Wazara Detention Center, where Mahsa Amini was killed. And there I was forced to take off all my clothes. It was the forced nudity. It is another form of sexual violence that I experienced. I can talk about it for hours and hours, that how it, after even I was released, I was all the time thinking of the experiences that they made for me. And, but, you know, we don't step back. They can use any forms of sexual violence, forced nudity, rape, using object, and many things, but we continue fighting.
Mary, thank you for sharing that with us, because I'm sure it's not easy to talk about experiences like that. But as you say, it is important to talk about what is happening. And you've said that sexual violence and abuse against women is widely being used in Iranian prisons, in particular against female protesters and activists. Can you tell us more about that?
You know, we face a patriarchal and theocratic Islamic regime, and sexual violence is used as a weapon, and this is defined by the nature of this regime. So unfortunately, I have to say there is no wonder that they use extensively and systematically this weapon against women, especially against protesters and the activists who are totally against the regime, not reformists. But those who have no tolerance in front of the regime, and they just want a complete revolution. And the form of sexual violence is ranging from making an unsafe environment and verbal sexual violence to rape, gang rape, rape using objects, and many other things. And but I want to emphasize, because the news everywhere is usually focused on the sexual violence that is inflicted on women in detention centers and prisons. But I want to say that in addition to the known detention centers and prisons that we have in Iran, there are numerous unknown and unnamed houses in many cities in Iran that they are operated by security agencies, and you don't step foot in detention centers and prisons, but you are transferred to these houses. There's no address, there's no name, we don't know anything about them. And in these houses, many of protesters and other detainees are under torture, persecution, and also sexual violence.
Mary, I'm sorry to interrupt you, but we are a little bit short of time. I'd just like to ask you one more thing. What more would you like to see done to bring awareness of this issue of sexual violence and abuse against women in Iranian prisons? What needs to happen?
If you let me, I would like to even talk about the sexual violence that even non-political prisoners, female prisoners, experience and endure in prisons, especially in Rajne prison, because they are forgotten in anywhere, and just the focus is on political prisoners. But I personally saw in a few times, and also some of my other friends who were imprisoned in the same prison, that the prisons who were addicted and they needed drug, they had severe pain, and they wanted to do whatever just to get rid of that pain. And some of the officers wanted them to give them sexual services. And
Mary, I'm so sorry, we are out of time. I'm so sorry to interrupt you, but I'd like to thank you so much for speaking to us. That's Iranian journalist and human rights activist Narges Mohammadi. Mary, thank you.
Thank you.